Is Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, which means may God's peace, blessing, and mercy be upon you all. My story starts in April 2001 in the Redlands, in a tiny little suburb called Kapalaba. My husband and I had just built our house, our first house. During the building process, we would actually go and visit the home site, the building site. And while we're there, we engage in conversations with our neighbors who are also building their homes. We decided that we weren't going to erect any fences because we all had young children. So these were basically strangers who only met, at the site. But we decided intentionally that we wanted to create something different because we all had young children at that time, that we were going to allow our children to jump from house to house, from yard to yard. It didn't matter to my neighbors that we were devout Muslims. It didn't matter to me or my family that they were Catholics, Anglican, or Greek Orthodox. But then September 11th, 2001 happened. And I remember that morning very clearly. My husband and I were getting ready for work, and we usually turn on the morning news just to see what was happening. And I remember the images of the towers getting burnt, the images of the towers collapsing. Those horrific images are still seared into my memory. I remember I turned to my husband that morning and I said, the fences are going to go up. There was no way that our very still fragile relationship of building, that connectedness with one another of just 5 months could surely withstand the horrific, tragic events that had occurred in America. But the fences didn't go up. And I thought, okay, we'll give it a few weeks because then it'll sink in. And what will also sink in and what they'll realize is that our eldest son, who was 2.5 at that time, shared the same name as the most wanted man at that time, Osama. The fences didn't go up. In fact, the fences didn't go up, and the kids still played with him, even though his name was Osama. I was so inspired by that experience with my neighbors that I honestly decided that I was going to go on a one-woman campaign and basically to share with anyone my faith and how I live it, by the grace and compassion of God. And I thought I was going to be embraced as I have been embraced by my neighbors. I had some great moments of embrace. I had some great moments of openness. I had some great moments of understanding. But I also had some very ugly moments of narrow-mindedness, of dogma, of bigotry. So much so that after 5 years, I said enough. I just couldn't do it anymore. During that time, I was asked to meet with Dave by a Brisbane City Council community development officer. And her introduction or her, qualification for meeting Dave was that he's great. He's a devout Christian. You'll love him. And I honestly said no. Because some of my darkest moments on that campaign for everyone to meet a Muslim, some of the darkest moments, unfortunately, came from Christians who were there not to understand or to listen with an open heart, but really to bash a faith that I was very passionate about and wanted to share. So here I stand in West End, where my story with Dave starts and hasn't ended. In fact, our very first project occurred also here in West End, where we decided that we were going to celebrate the end of fasting at the Uniting Church, wherein we held a feast for both Christians and Muslims to come together to reflect on the shared concept and values of fasting and what it meant and how that informs how we live our life as both Muslims and Christians. So we started our relationship on common ground, what we have in common, and used that really as a place to build respect and trust, to be able to launch then into the more difficult topics, such as the theological understanding of Jesus, and we had quite a number of those sessions, and of course, Jihad. So it's only natural that after 8 years of discussion, that Dave would reflect on both of these topics and appropriately title his reflections, The Jihad of Jesus. It made me really think, and it made me really reflect on my own faith and its history, and the ugly bits included, and how that informs how I now live my life as one in submission to God. And all too often I'm told at speaking engagements that religion is the root of all conflict in the world. And I would always disagree and knew that religions could be a source to overcome conflict. However, until now, I didn't have a resource manual to constructively as well as systematically embark on such peace building. By approaching nonviolent struggle through the embodiment of Jesus, we can, and I quote, denounce the exploitation of the poor by the rich. Number 2, denounce oppression of the powerless by the powerful, and actively advocate liberation of disempowered groups of people. Number 3, advocate communities with leadership that would serve rather than oppress. 4, create communities committed to doing justice to the marginalized and the disadvantaged. And finally, 5, if we were to follow Jesus, we would demonstrate active, radical, sacrificial nonviolence to free people from the cycles of violence. So here I stand before you as a devout Muslim, proclaiming that the embodiment of Jesus will be the basis for my jihad movement. The movement for the radical, or as Dave states in the book, and I quote, a strong yet gentle nonviolent struggle for reconciliation and peace. I hope that this will also be your jihad moment. Thank you.